The city is probably the oldest, most enduring invention of our civilization. The words are interchangeable: civilization, civil, civic, city. Cities evolve over time. They respond to crises, and historically, they emerge from crises stronger than ever before. So what are the future trends for cities, and what are the lessons of history?
Hello, my name is Belinda Tato. I'm founding partner of Ecosistema Urbano, and we started the practice in the year 2000 together with my partner Jose Luis Vallejo. So it's been already 20 years. So we've been working in different parts of the world. We had the opportunity to learn and work in different environments, in different climatic contexts, and in different cultural and socio-economic contexts. So it's been a kind of a beautiful and kind of a learning process, and I will be sharing some examples with you today. So this is a diagram that kind of synthesizes the kind of topics that we've been working on. So the first one is environmental. So we've been kind of providing and designing climatic comfort in public spaces. We've been working around urban ecosystems, and we've been working around resiliency, trying to make cities more resilient for the future. Regarding social, I like to think that our work is educational per nature. We've been kind of developing engagement processes, and our work brings equity to land and to territories. And the third topic is technology. So we cannot avoid technology today. So we've been exploring ways of creating interactive environments, bringing innovation into public space, and designing open processes, assuming that we don't have full control of the space that we design, which is absolutely awesome. So I will be presenting different projects around these three different categories, although they're all kind of connected and everything is kind of blended. So regarding environment, this is a project that we built in the city of Madrid, and the starting point was a new development that the city was kind of pursuing in the outer skirts of Madrid. So as you can see in the slide, the city has been basically designed for the car and for the car speed. It's not very welcoming for pedestrians. And as you can see, most of the space of the street was devoted for the car. So here we have a very narrow sidewalk with very poor trees and a parking lane, two driving lanes, another parking lane, and the same scheme on the other side. So basically everything was for the car and the car speed. And that has very little to do with the lifestyle that we have in Madrid, and which is kind of connected to the Mediterranean lifestyle, in which we intensely use public space. Somehow public space is the extension of our kind of domestic space, okay? So in these kind of new neighborhoods, people are kind of forced to use the car more often because there's nothing really to do in the public space, and also all the commercial space is kind of concentrated. It's not kind of blended into the, into every building. So not only we created these kind of iconic elements, we also kind of multiply by 3 the number of trees that were originally in the street. So the whole idea was to create this climatic comfort by natural means, by planting many trees, but the trees require this number of years until they're really fully grown. So the principle of the project, as you can see, is this idea of creating this kind of structure that emulates the behavior of the tree. So we have the air coming into these chimneys. So the air goes through this battery of water atomizers. It gets cooler and therefore heavier, so it creates a microclimate at the ground level. So the structures were designed in such a way that people could use and conquer them in different ways. And that's the fascinating part. Like, we don't have full control of that project, and that is fascinating. And people have been using it for different purposes. As you can see, the vegetation was also a great component of the structure. And the whole idea was not only to create this kind of climatic comfort, but also kind of an ecosystem on its own. In this image, you can see the water so much because they were testing the water system, but actually in the summer, because the air is very, very dry in Madrid, the water would disappear immediately. You wouldn't see it. So these are some instances in which the project has been used, again, for different purposes, especially in the summertime, because the summer is very tough in Madrid. And we really need this kind of breathing space outside, because usually apartments are kind of very, limited space. This is a second version of the same project. This was in a different context. This is Shanghai, the expo in 2020. And of course, the departure point is a completely different one because the climatic conditions in Shanghai are totally opposite. Like the weather is very, very hot, but also is very, very humid. So, in Madrid, we were kind of, creating moisture to kind of cool down the air. And here is about creating breeze to actually dry the air, right? So I would like to point out that actually we're working always with what we say low tech because we cannot invent things. It's about kind of trying to grab the technologies that are already in the market and try to combine them and use them in a different way to create these kind of artifacts or elements. So this is how it worked. Again, we have to rely on existing technologies. So the idea of creating breezes made us introduce a fan that is 7-meter diameter, and the fan was connected to a telescopic pole. So the fan would come closer to the ground or farther up, depending on the climatic conditions that were measured by the existing sensors. This is a different project, again, a different environment, but always we have this kind of will to actually provide climatic comfort in the outer space so that actually we are kind of democratizing the public space and its use. So this is the city of West Palm Beach. This is the waterfront. As you can see, it's not very exciting in a way that it doesn't create that many opportunities to be comfortable. The summer is very, very tough. Again, it's very, very humid and very hot. And it's in such a way that actually people stay indoors a lot. That was very shocking because we come from a different culture in which we embrace public space even in the summer, whereas in here there is a very, very strong culture of air conditioning. So people live in a very kind of controlled bubble in the office, in your car, in the restaurant, in your home, etc. So the whole idea was like, how can we reactivate the public space by introducing, again, climate comfort? And so this is the waterfront. And the idea was to create these canopies that are bringing new uses and new programs to the waterfront. Again, we're working with low tech and existing systems that are already out there in the industry. And so this canopy is relying on bioclimatic devices, on a light bioclimatic canopy with ropes, with vegetation. The vegetation is extraordinary in Florida. It's just overwhelming. It's beautiful. So how can we create this climatic comfort and new programs in the outdoor space? So for instance, here, the proposal is to embed a kind of a swimming pool as part of the public space. So how can we create new features that are accessible to everyone, especially for those who are living in the outer skirts of the city? And when you have to come to the downtown, if there are no open opportunities for them to come, they're actually not coming at all. So it's also a matter of equity. And also this is an image of how the city, the proposal is actually kind of blending the city and the built environment with the natural systems. So again, how can we enhance the urban ecosystems and bring in new people, new programs to these kind of new opportunities that are created? And how this kind of blending has different kind of configurations depending on what area of the city we're working on. This is an additional project. This is a kindergarten in the outskirts of Madrid. So it was a competition that was calling for ideas for a new school in an area that is an industrial area. So it's not a very exciting kind of environment because there are trucks driving by, there are industries, there is sound or noise. So the idea, one of the departure points was also to create this kind of buffer space. So we are kind of working with the topography to create a kind of a safe space. But a very, very important component of the proposal was to actually recycle the waste waters from the building. So we identified a company that is working with this Macrophyte system. So the Macrophyte Lagoon can actually purify the waste waters from the building so that this water can be reused on site. And the idea was to reuse it for the irrigation. So Madrid and mainly the kind of the south of Europe has water struggle, and it will be struggling even more in the coming years. So the idea was like to create the systems that actually enable us to have some green lawns. Otherwise, we wouldn't just do it. So this is an image of the microphyte plants and how they're kind of floating in the lagoon and how the roots are cleaning the water. And again, how can we recycle this water, clean it, store it, and then use it for the irrigation. So this is a picture from the construction. Here we can see in the middle the lagoon when it's emptied. And this is a section and how we're creating some topography to create this kind of buffer space, and how we take advantage of this new topography as a kind of a playful element. So we are kind of, putting these slides. So the topography, it becomes, just as it is, a kind of a playful element that children are enjoying even in the weekends. So this is an image, outside of school hours, it has become a kind of a very popular spot for kids and teenagers. And this is an image of how it is right now. So you can see the macrophytes already grown. You can see that it has become a popular space, a comfortable space. But the most important is to create the community, right? So I like to think that our work is educational. Every time that we're doing something outdoors in the public space, we're kind of making a statement. And in this case, the statement is like, okay, buildings can recycle their own water. They can become a kind of a good practice to get people inspired. And the most important is the building got awards and all of that, but it's about the community kind of being aware of this, being aware of this value, and they're proud of it. And this becomes something that goes beyond architecture. It's about creating a new mindset, let's say. This is another project also in the city of West Palm Beach. And again, the idea was to work with these climatic different kind of environments for the different programs. So the departure point was to recycle an existing garage building, and our proposal was like, okay, let's use the garage building, but let's create a structure on top of it, bringing different programs from a YMCA, office space, housing, commercial space, retail space, restaurants, and public space. So the whole idea was like, the whole intervention should be public in a way that we're creating, again, public space that is accessible to everyone, not to only the people who live in the downtown. So this kind of red ramp that you're seeing, the whole idea is to create this kind of open street that brings you all the way to the rooftop to actually enjoy the beautiful view of the water. So, there are different concepts embedded in the building, but again, the most important is how can we create this kind of climatic courtyard. So how can we make a building that actually is breathing, and how can we also take advantage of both the day and the night, and to minimize the energy consumption. So we're designing a building that actually minimizes it, not only by using uh, passive systems and active systems, but also by creating different kind of degrees of comfort within the building. So we are assuming that not every program requires air conditioning, not every program requires this kind of full comfort, let's say, especially again for the summer. So the whole idea was to create this kind of in-between spaces. So here we're seeing this kind of in-between space between the existing garage and the structure on top of it, and these in-between spaces between the core of the building and the facade. So this kind of buffer space is also kind of creating this climatic buffer and improvement of the inside conditions. So this diagram is synthesizing the different programs that come together into the building, and how it is compatible to have these different programs with different users around different kind of times throughout the day, the week, and even the year, and also the different climatic requirements that these programs have. So again, the whole idea is how can a building which has some kind of private space but also public space can become also a driver of equity in many different ways, not only from the program but also from the point of view of accessibility and all of that. So I'm gonna change topic now. This is about technology. Regarding technology, we have been exploring different possibilities. So one immediate possibility is like, how can people, users, and citizens start kind of interacting and customizing the public space they're using? So again, we rely on existing technology, which is already a lot, to actually create this kind of connection. So how can people book for a space or reprogram a space or customize the climatic devices or the lighting or the furniture. So how can we create kind of simple, accessible systems that enable people to be more interactive with their space that they're inhabiting? So this is a project that we are just recently starting to build in the city of Malaga. So it is a public space for the University of Malaga. It is a 3-kilometer street or boulevard. And the whole idea is to bring some of the university activity, some of the academic activity into the outside. Again, climatically, the city of Malaga is extremely mild, it's beautiful like most of the year. So many of the activities that are usually taking place indoors can be moved into the outside. And the whole idea was also like, how can we create a space that is not only for the citizens or for the students, so it's a kind of a blended space. So how can we bring some of the knowledge that is kind of encapsulated in the buildings into the public space? This is interesting because this was before COVID, and then all of a sudden it makes even more sense because during the COVID area, of course, there is this need and this urge to actually bring some of this activity outdoors for healthy issues. So these are some instances like, again, how the space should be an infrastructure, not only for classes to take place, but actually for sharing knowledge. How can we enhance the connectivity between the students? How can we provide the infrastructure for them to be able to cooperate and to co-create, right? And how can we make, again, the interface of that space as a point of information about the campus, as a point of information about the classes, as a point of information about the climatic conditions of the different areas of the campus. So again, we're not only creating the physical space, but we're also designing the digital kind of space that actually accompanies the space to enhance it. So these are some videos and images of how we imagine this space to be and how students or professors or people users will be able to manipulate the lighting, the Wi-Fi, the climatic conditions, because we're also kind of bringing some climatic comfort into the open space. This is a small project that we built in the city of Dordrecht in the Netherlands. It's a playground, it's a play object. And the whole idea is to also make this sustainability a playful word, because sometimes it gets too negative, like we feel guilty immediately when we hear the term. So the idea was to make awareness about sustainability and energy production among the children and among the youngsters. So this is an energy carousel. So when the kids are kind of, playing with it and moving and rotating it during the day, they're producing energy that is stored underground in the batteries. And this energy that is stored in the batteries underground will be used for the lighting in the night. So again, how can we bring this educational component to the projects that we do? How can we make people aware of it? This is an additional piece of work that we've been working on for the last few years. So this is a digital app. It's a digital app that actually creates this, again, interface between users and designers. And the whole idea is to collect ideas. So it's a kind of a participatory tool. So it is called Local In. And the idea is a very simple and kind of intuitive interface in which people can post their ideas around different topics. They can geo-reference them in a map, and then the visualization allows you to kind of filter them by topic, by negative and positive, or you can see the images and so on. So for instance, this is a snapshot of the tool used in the city of Encarnacion in Paraguay. So the red stands for the problems and the blue for the opportunities. And again, we identified a number of categories, but this is completely kind of open for customization for different cities. The tool is Creative Commons tool, so it is available for anyone who wants to use it and customize it for their own purposes. So we have used this tool in different projects and processes of participation around the world. And again, these are different kind of visualizations. You can see it as a word cloud and so on and so forth. So I'm jumping into the third category, social. So we've been working around participatory processes around the world. And, in this diagram, you can see, ranging from, I don't know, 20 people, 80 people, 100 or 2000, and different time frames also. So we believe designers cannot address design without public participation. We cannot, you know, we cannot design the future of cities, this future of public space, without taking into account people's dreams, people's concerns, people's inputs, people's expectations. The whole challenge is how can we create this conversation and how can we make this conversation to be meaningful for both, right? And so we've been exploring that for 20 years. And I must confess, there's always a lot of, there is a little bit of suffering. I'm not saying this is super simple and doable and always pleasant. I mean, there is all these different experiences that we had, but it's necessary. So what I would like to, to kind of emphasize is that it is necessary. We do have tools, but I'm sure there is room for much more innovation to create new tools that enable designers to be more equipped to to create this conversation and again make them positive and meaningful. So these are some instances of a project we developed in the city of Hamar in Norway. It is in the north of Oslo. So we entered a competition with our proposal that was 1,000 square. 1,000 square was kind of the lemma, the logo for our proposal. And we meant instead of doing one solution, instead of us a single team or single designer provide one single thing, let us test out 1,000 solutions, right? So the whole idea is like, how can we create a process? How can we create a process, a creative process with the local community, but also with the global community? So we ended up winning the competition, which was amazing. And we ended up renaming the project as Dream Hammer. So Dream Hammer has these different branches. It's got a physical lab. We created a kind of a working space in front of the square that has to be kind of rethought. We also created digital activities. We created urban actions. We engaged the academic community, not only locally in the city of Hamar, but beyond in different schools of Europe. So we created this kind of open creative design process that was kind of making people aware of what was happening and trying to create as many communication channels as possible, assuming that participation is not just, you know, organizing a meeting and and just expecting that everybody's going to show up is a little more complex. So you need to create these different channels of communication. This is an image of the physical lab in which we created these exhibitions, workshops, all sort of activities. It was also our working space, and it was very interesting because people would show up at the regular activities, but they would just also show up spontaneously to share their thoughts. We also created the digital lab in which we were doing online workshops, but also kind of sharing the process along its development. We created the app, as you saw before. So assuming that maybe teenagers are not so willing to come to our workshops, how can we create something that is appealing for them to participate as well? So this is how the square looked before the intervention. We created this kind of urban actions. So this was called Paint Hammer. So we invited the collective Boa Mistura from Madrid to transform the space in just 2 days. So the space became a kind of Norwegian pattern. So it had been a parking for 50 years, and then all of a sudden it was a public space. It was an attempt of a public space. So this kind of projects is about not only talking about transformation. Is like, how can we design experiences so that we don't talk so much and actually people can experience and have their feelings, and kind of test one-to-one how the space could perform in a different way. So this is an image of a lunch, an open free lunch that we created in the in the recently transformed space. The transformation was temporary. So, the square was, we were designing the final design, but in the meantime, we wanted to kind of test it out and mock it up and see how people felt about it. So this is an image, aerial image of this transformation. So we did a number of activities. So this was the cream hammer activity, the green hammer activity, the play hammer activity. So again, the light hammer. So how can we bring people together around the space and start experiencing differently, but also creating these conversations around the space and its future? So not only we did these kind of urban actions, but we also engaged the local academic community. So there was more than 1,400 kids also working and brainstorming around the future of the square. And it was interesting because they also became ambassadors of this transformation, bringing the stories to their homes, right? We're all very busy, we're overwhelmed with work and information. So how can we also get people excited, intrigued, and interested in the future of their cities, right? So this is another event that we had. So that is one example, but we have tested out participation again, in different scales, in different time frames, in different cities. So this is Tegucigalpa, Honduras, a completely different environment. So we did a number of workshops. We were not in charge of the master plan. We were just invited to do these activities. And it was exciting. It was inspiring. It was inspiring because the environment is a little bit tough, but still the university students were extremely inspiring for us. And it was beautiful to see how they have hope about the future, how they want to be active, transforming their public space. And this is just one of the activities that we did. We launched them with 2,200 post-it notes, and they came to the streets to ask for ideas, and they collect them, and then we made this mural at the museum in Tegucigalpa. So I would like to also highlight how important it is for us, like when we're working in a city, we're only there temporarily. So, we cannot fix it all at all. We're just there, we get inspired, we put our energy and resources, and we do the best that we can, but still we're only there temporarily. So for us, it is very important to create these kind of links and relationships with the local community so that they can become empowered and inspire themselves, because they are the ones to keep on working and to keep on improving their environments. So, different instances, like how can we design these conversations for people, to sit around the table and start looking at their cities in a different way? How can we create this conversation for the youngest? So this is Asunción in Paraguay. We realized through a series of interviews that actually the kids who have been born in the city, they completely they don't know their city center. The city center has been kind of neglected, the historical center. So how can we create a kind of a comic like cartoonish version of their buildings, so that they have to create a story around these buildings? So, and this is Cuenca in Ecuador. How can we were rethinking the courtyards of the buildings. So how can we create these conversations with the kids, and how can we make them think around their thoughts, so that they realize that this is not an individual approach to the city? They have to kind of agree upon that. And this is also in Tegucigalpa. Again, how can we create a mean of communication with the different people, the different ages, so that they become part of this conversation in a meaningful way? And this is a different exercise in Exuma in the Bahamas. So again, we were only there for a very short period of time. And so how can we create this conversation with the locals? So we designed this, I mean, we took advantage of the origami, and we created this idea of the petals of the origami. So the red was for the problems, the blue for the opportunities, and we created a number of workshops in the high school and in every primary school. And the kids were being part, they were kind of writing their wishes and their problems. And the idea was to create these kind of flowers. And with all these ideas and problems, we were creating an installation, because people are very generous with when they're participating, they're kind of bringing in their energy, their thoughts, their time, and also their hopes, right? So what can we give in return? So we create this little temporary installation that we call the Garden of Dreams, so people could actually enjoy and learn about each other and know what others are thinking about the future. And it was very inspiring to see that the little kids, they really want to change the world. And well, it was beautiful. So this is a video that we produced for the Hammer project, and I wanted to emphasize how important communication is. When we're saying that we want to engage, the broader audience, we want to bring public excited about their city, about their future. The means of communication that we need to bring can not only be the traditional drawings by architects, like plans and sections, or even renders. We really need to create this kind of a storytelling. How can we how can we get people excited about the future of the city? How can they project themselves into these kind of stories? So we use a lot of video making, and we have from very kind of handmade videos with drawings to more sophisticated ones. We try to create these stories about the future of the cities, and also this idea of transformation over time, like how can we show that actually changes doesn't happen at once, but we can create these catalytic elements or transformations that can actually start creating a different mood, a different perception, start also changing mindsets and creating a different attitude towards your city, right? And so, yeah, we try to recreate this over time. And it's always challenging because cities usually have a very limited budget and they cannot do everything at once. And that's why it is so important we create a number of projects that range from 2,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 500,000, 2 million, 20 million, 200, right? Because cities have different kind of challenges and different kind of scales, and we have to provide the tools for them to be sure that there is change is possible even with very low budgets. Okay. And so, well, thank you so much. I think that's it for now. I can include in the presentation a number of links to videos or to other material. And I thank you very much, the foundation, for giving me the opportunity to be here with you today. And I hope that our work inspires you. And I would like to say that it's a whole learning process. We keep on learning, but I enjoy the learning anyway. So thank you so much.